We're going to talk about what has happened in Ukraine on this day of the Russian invasion. We'll examine the actions and the strategies, both military and political. Now, if this is your first time watching, my name is Darren Gertis. I'm a professor who's built multiple leadership programs at Charleston Southern University. So we'll also view these events through the lens of leadership. And I also wrote a book about Zelensky called I Need Ammunition, Not a Ride, and you can find it on Amazon.
Okay, so in this video, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to invite you into my creative process. So when I am looking up, what to focus on, I'm going to start with something like, well, something that I know I'm going to deal with, like the president of Ukraine, his speech. It was important to hear from the EU leaders that the end of the war and peace for Ukraine must be exactly as our people see them. And then I'll go and highlight, and I'll use a online highlighting tool. And here it says, by the way, when four leaders arrived in Kiev yesterday, it coincided with the beginning of an air raid siren. Russia has created a background for everyone to hear these sirens to create a tense atmosphere, but no one was scared. And it not only inspired us to be as specific as possible and to negotiate for our interests, for all Ukraine and for all Europe. So, okay, four leaders came. So, German Chancellor Scholz, Macron from France, the Italian Prime Minister, and then eventually the Romanian Prime Minister joined them, and they negotiated, and they went to visit Irpin, and then let's see, they all essentially gave their consent that they are supporting Ukraine's candidate status. So that was good. Now, in the news, you're also seeing things like people talking about, well, they're going to have to negotiate for peace. That's what we really need, not to keep pursuing the war. And he's addressing that here. All leaders understand why negotiations to end the war are not underway exclusively because of the Russian position, which is not only trying to intimidate everyone in Europe and continue the destruction of our state. They do not want us to look away to peace. This is an aggressor who must decide for himself that the war must end. Okay, so I'm highlighting Zelensky. Then after that, sometimes I'll look over and I'll go to Twitter and I'll look over at the UK Ministry of Defense. UK Ministry of DFENCE. There's a weird irregular spelling to that, and I'll see what's going on at the UK Ministry of Defense. And I'll scroll down to their intelligence estimates. So let's see, where are we? Give me just a moment. Show this thread. Okay, here's the intelligence estimate for June 16th, and it'll tell us, it'll be a very useful one. Everything from there comes up very nicely. All the main bridges over the Severodonetsk River, which link the contested towns of Severodonetsk and Ukrainian-held territory, have now highly likely been destroyed. We already know that. Ukraine has probably managed to withdraw a large portion of its combat troops who were originally holding the town. The situation continues to be extremely difficult for the Ukrainian forces and civilians remaining. With the bridges highly likely destroyed, Russia will now need to either conduct a contested river crossing or advance on its currently stalled flanks to turn tactical gain into operational advantage. Russia's combat force in the Donbas is highly likely to operating increasingly ad hoc and severely unmanned groupings. Okay, so this isn't telling us anything that we don't really know at this point, but it's good to have the update nonetheless. Then I'll turn my attention to something like The Guardian, which will, at Guardian, Al Jazeera is actually really good at this, at just documenting and not collating, but they're cataloging everything that's going on. Here's day 113 of the invasion. German Chancellor Scholz, we were just reading about. Romanian president was the fourth president. They visited Irpin, we just talked about. Russia's combat force in the Donbas is highly likely operating in an ad hoc and severely undermined groupings. We just read that from the British military intelligence. This one's new. Children born in Ukraine's Kherson region since February 24th automatically receive Russian citizenship, according to a statement by the Russian-imposed authority occupying the region. Wow, that's something. And then I'll go through that. I'll sometimes go through Al Jazeera or another one. I'll also look. I have some online groups that I look at, like news from and about Ukraine in English on Facebook. And here, so there's articles, and I'll chase the article down. So when will NATO really help Ukraine? And then I'll chase that article down. Here's the article. When will NATO really help Ukraine? And I'll scan the article, get a good sense of what's going on in here. Yeah, essentially, the author was saying deliveries from the U.S. To Afghanistan were so much, and Ukraine's only received so much, and what Ukraine really needs to win. Then I'll go on and I'll see, well, what's the U.S. saying? And so here's just yesterday, not the 16th. Okay, so this is day 106 of the effort. But this was on June 15th, not June 16th. Uh, Here, representatives from more than 50 nations pledged to get more military capabilities into the hands of Ukrainian forces. Okay, that sounds good. Austin announced that President Biden had approved $1 billion security package. We know that this includes 18 more 155 M77 Towered howitzers and 36,000 rounds of ammunition. Okay, great. Two additional Harpoon coast defense systems. Well, two doesn't sound like much, but maybe it's just big or something. And then scroll down a little bit. And now I've pre-read all these, so I'm showing you what I do. Now, he said a lot of really important things. To date, we have trained 420 Ukrainians on the M777 howitzer, 300 on the self-propelled M109, 129 on the M13, armored personnel carrier. I mean, I'm can't imagine that there's going to be a lot of training to a personnel carrier. 100 on the unmanned aerial systems. Those are drones, so that's important. 60 most recently, and this is the most important, 60 most recently graduated today on the high mobility artillery rocket system. This is the big rocket system that can fire multiple things. And this is what they really, really desperately need. But only 60 have been trained so far. And so that's part of the problem. So getting the weapons is one thing, getting them in country is another, getting training is another, and getting them on the battlefield is something else. Miley said that since the start of the Russian invasion, the Ukrainians have asked for 10 battalions of artillery. 12 battalions of artillery were delivered. The contact group has also delivered 97,000 anti-tank systems. That's more than there are tanks in the world, he said. Okay, now the anti-tank thing is great, except you have to be up close. So you really need the HIMARS in order to fire at a great distance. So that's half the trick. They asked for 200 tanks. They got 237 tanks. He continued. They asked for 100 infantry fighting vehicles. They got over 300. We delivered, roughly speaking, 16,000 or so air defense systems and 60,000 air defense rounds. Okay, well that's great. I mean, so the U.S. is saying, look, we're delivering. Now it's the time of the delivering that's half the problem. Okay, the HIMARS, or high mobility artillery rocket system, will be an important addition to Ukraine's arsenal. The U.S. military is training HIMARS crews one platoon at a time in Germany. I don't understand that. I'm sure they have a reason, but why one platoon at a time? By the end of this month, we will transfer HIMARS systems, ammunition, and trained crews for operational use in defense of Ukraine. Okay, by the end of the month, but they need it like a month ago, 2 months ago. They needed it. But that's so he's giving an example, a sense of what's going on. Okay, finally, he ends with this paragraph. Ukraine is making incredible sacrifices in defense of their country. And this quote I thought was really telling. In media, you see it reported that Ukraine is taking 100 killed and 100 or 200 or 300 wounded per day. He said, I would say these are in the ballpark of our assessment. So that's telling that what the Ukrainians are saying is about factually correct. And I'm glad to hear that it's not like, something like, no, they're losing 1,000 a day or something along those lines. Okay, so at any rate, so that's the U.S. Department of Defense, their briefing. And then, just for some color, I want to find out what the Russians are saying. So here's Sergei Lavrov. He's saying Russia is not squeaky clean and not ashamed. Oh, by the way, I didn't show you what was going on the battlefield, did I? So here's the deep state map. And I'll go look at a deep state map and I'll try to understand what's going on. And I'll click on this as well. And then I'll just try to get a sense of, okay, well, it looks like Severodonetsk is in pretty bad shape. Let's go click on this timeline. And so here's, let's go up. Instead of look at server to nest, let's look at Slovance is going to be in kind of danger next. And you can kind of tell from the direction things have gone. So I'm going to go and look at this is 6-9 or 6-8, 6-9, 6-10 is going to be next. And you can just see the map as the Russian territory just keeps growing here. 6-12, 6-13, 14, okay, 16. Okay, so they've taken a lot of territory. In Severodonetsk, we already know what's going on, and they've blown the bridges, got most of them out. They're holding this small little territory. Okay, so that's what's going on militarily, and I usually lead with that because most people find that interesting. But I want to talk about what's going on militarily. I want to talk about what's going on politically, and I want to talk about what's going on economically. Okay, I also will go to tasks or RT or something along those lines. And then this one's BBC, but it's Sergei Lavrov, and I've already highlighted here. he's I mean the guy he's amazing. He's asked about what's going on. I mean, why did you invade? Well, we didn't invade Ukraine, he claims. We declared a special military operation because we had absolutely no other way of explaining to the West that dragging Ukraine into NATO was a criminal act. Okay. So he's wrong on multiple levels. One, it's a special military. It's like saying, I didn't steal. I just took the thing that didn't belong to me. It's the same stuff. Um, and then a special military operation. That's an invasion. And is it about NATO really, or is it about your ambitions? Okay. And then said I quoted to him an official United Nations report about Ukrainian village, 360 residents, including 74 children and 5 persons with disabilities, were forced to be in a basement for a month. Is that fighting Nazis, he asked. Well, it's a great pity, but international diplomats, including the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, the UN Secretary General, and other UN representatives are being put under pressure by the West, and very often they're being used to amplify fake news spread by the West. What kind of result is that? He admitted Russia is not squeaky clean. Russia is what it is, and we're not ashamed of who we are. And then a little bit later, he went on and said, when he was asked about the 2 British men sentenced to death, he said, when I pointed out that in the eyes of the West, it was Russia that was responsible for his fate, for their fate, he responded, I am not interested in the eyes of the West at all. I'm only interested in international law. I almost choked when I read that. That's amazing that he would talk about international law with all the international law that Russia has violated. Okay, so that's a view into my creative process as I look at this. This is the 106th day of the invasion in Ukraine, and I hope that helps you understand how I go about cataloging what's happening day by day. Thanks for your time.
Hey, if this video was helpful, hit like to help others find it in YouTube's algorithm. Subscribe so that you can stay informed. And one more thing, if you are moved to contribute to the humanitarian aid for Ukraine, I have a link below for Samaritan's Purse. If you want to give, be sure to give only to reputable organizations. There's a lot of scammers out there. Thanks for your time.